talking about liver disease and metabolic syndrome because we are in a metabolic health crisis and every person needs this information because over 90% of adults do not satisfy the criteria for metabolic health. Fatty liver disease is now classified as an epidemic. 1 in 3 people has it, and many people don't know that they have it. And fatty liver has surpassed alcohol as the #1 cause of liver disease and liver cancer. And women over 40 are in the highest risk category, and it is becoming more common in children. But the great news is fatty liver is 100% reversible if you know you have it and you take action. So Dr. Ibrahim Hanouneh, one of the top experts in liver disease, is going to share what we need to know so we can avoid fatty liver or reverse it if we have it. Originally from Syria, Dr. Hanouneh completed his internal medicine residency and gastroenterology and hepatology fellowship at the Cleveland Clinic and served on staff there before working at the Mayo Clinic and MNGI Digestive Health. It was at the Cleveland Clinic that he met renowned dietitian Kristen Kirkpatrick. You may remember I interviewed Kristen on the podcast in episode 11 last year. They teamed up to write what I think are 2 of the best books on liver disease, Skinny Liver, and then the follow-up book, Regenerative Health. I really love these books because you get the physician and the dietitian perspectives, and they break down the science and what to do in really simple terms. So it's not only a really informative read, but it's practical and fun. So in this conversation, we're going to dive into the causes of fatty liver, who is most at risk, how you test to see if you have fatty liver, the associated health issues like heart disease and stroke, the different treatments, the 2 new medications, and the latest research about transplants. I'm also going to ask Dr. Hanouneh about the new studies that are getting incredible results, the best preventative strategies, and how to keep our liver healthy, and why doing liver flushes and taking certain supplements may actually be doing damage to your liver. So please share this episode with anyone you know who has fatty liver or more advanced liver disease. And please also share it with women over 40. Anyone who is overweight, has sleep apnea, diabetes, or any women who have had gestational diabetes. All of these people are at a higher risk of developing liver disease. They may already have it and not know it. Dr. Hanouneh has written many papers and speaks all over the world about liver disease. Not only is he brilliant, but he is the kindest, most approachable doctor I have ever met. I'm so excited for you to get this information about the liver from somebody who makes it so accessible. So let's get the skinny from Dr. Ibrahim Hanouneh. Oh, Dr. Hanouneh, I'm so excited to have this conversation about the liver and liver disease. So take me back to the "it has to be me" moment where you just went, I've got to be a doctor.
I grew up in the Middle East in a small town called Latakia in Syria, on the Mediterranean, and I had the opportunity to do research actually with a mentor who was doing research in liver disease, and it fascinated me. Really did. I've always been fascinated by the liver, by the capacity of the liver to regenerate, and I thought, I got to do this. That's what that's technically the field I need to focus on.
Yeah.
And it's always like, really, I found it extremely rewarding being in a position where you are able to help people and change someone else's life. So that's how I started.
You went over and did some study over in England, didn't you?
When I was in med school, I did elective in Sheffield at the University of Sheffield, and also elective in Toronto at the University of Toronto in Canada. That's part of the training when you're in med school. In the 4th year of med school, you do kind of elective. You start interacting with patients, and I did some of that in England and Canada.
And you say you were fascinated by the liver and you had this opportunity. What was it about the Cleveland Clinic where you went, I got to be there?
I've always been fascinated by the Cleveland Clinic. It's one of the best hospitals in the country, in the world. Yeah. You're surrounded by smart people, keep you humble, and it challenge you. I've known about the Cleveland Clinic since I grew up in Syria. I've known a lot of students and mentors who were kind of few years ahead of me in training, etc. They went to the U.S. to practice medicine, to learn, and they ended up at the Cleveland Clinic. So I've always learned about how great that institution is, and yeah, I start when I came to the U.S. Start trying to do research, and it was my focus at the Cleveland Clinic, and that's where I ended.
And take me inside of the "it has to be me" moment where you decided to write the books with Kristen, the Skinny Liver and then Regenerative Health, the follow-up book.
That goes back to at the time when I was at the Cleveland Clinic. Kristen Kirkpatrick, my friend and my co-author, she was at the
so
Cleveland
incredible.
Clinic. Oh, indeed. She was at the Cleveland Clinic back then. Given the epidemic, if you will, we'll talk about it, of fatty liver disease. There was really nothing back then, back in 2005, technically written in lay language to increase awareness of fatty liver disease and to tell someone with fatty liver what to do. We felt also the need for that kind of collaboration, between physician and a dietitian. Because, when it gets to fatty liver, nobody can do it on its own. Doctors can't do it on their own. Dietitian can't do it on their own. It's really the multidisciplinary, the collaboration approach between a dietitian and a physician to get the job done. So we got together and we thought, okay, well, this is going to be the next book. My mentor used to say, when you want to write a book, when you want to publish something, you have to write about not the idea everybody is talking about today, but about what's people going to talk about in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yes.
And really that's the, fatty liver checked all the boxes.
And we are certainly talking about it all the time. I mean, let's talk about some of these statistics because they're really alarming.
Indeed, yeah. Fatty liver, not to be an alarmist, to be honest with you, but this is just a fact. The fatty liver has affected 1 to 3 to 1 out of 4 individuals worldwide, particularly in the Western world, but pretty much worldwide. Wow. So I want you to think about that figure for a second. That's mean 1 out of 3 people, 1 out of 3 people you're going to run into today has fatty liver disease, has, what we are talking about today. So that's why we call it epidemic. I mean, it is so common.
It is unbelievable just how common it is and becoming more common in children.
Yes. That's unfortunate fact, because of the increased prevalence of type 2 diabetes, if you will, obesity, weight gain in children. We are seeing now fatty liver at young age. Back in the days, if you take me like 20, 30 years ago, I mean, really fatty liver is like, you get older, you start gaining weight, you develop diabetes, then you get fatty liver. Sure. But these days, we are seeing fatty liver in younger people, in children, mostly driven by diet and drinks, if you will, like the carbonated drink. The drinks, the pop has so much carbs and sugar and leads to increase, to weight gain, to diabetes, and eventually fatty liver. Not just we are seeing fatty liver at younger age, but we are seeing fatty liver with scar tissue in the liver at younger age, with fibrosis, what we call in medicine.
That is just unbelievable. So let's make sure we're all working with the same lexicon here. So what does the liver do and why do we need to care about it?
I call the liver the forgotten organ, quite frankly,
Yes.
Teresa. Like, we always talk about the heart and other organs, but as we should, but we don't pay too much attention to the liver. But to answer the question, what does the liver do? I call the liver security gate, TSA gate. Literally, anything comes to your body has to stop, filtered by the liver before they get into the system. That's what the liver does. It's kind of, the main factory that, check in on anything comes to your body. That's why it's extremely important. That's why, people with liver disease, advanced liver disease, for example, they start getting toxins build up in their system, which can lead to fatigue, altered sleep habits, forgetfulness, poor concentration, those kind of things. So you need your liver to filter all the bad guys, all the toxins from your body.
And so let's talk through the progression of liver disease. So you mentioned earlier that you get fatty liver and that, you can get fibrosis, which is a more advanced phase of liver disease. So can you just talk us through the progression of what happens if we don't stop it at the beginning stages?
Sure, yeah. Really good question. And because fatty liver is a silent disease. It doesn't, particularly at early stages, meaning, you may have fatty liver disease. You don't know because you have no symptoms related to your liver disease. But when fatty liver progresses to scar tissue, to inflammation in your liver, in your body, which can leave scar tissue behind, that will progress eventually to cirrhosis, if you will, of the liver. Cirrhosis meaning a lot of scar tissue in your liver, which can get eventually to the engine of the liver and causes liver failure. Patients may need liver transplant. Indeed, if you look at the most common indication of liver transplant in the United States now, it's fatty liver comes at the top, particularly in women. The most common cause actually of liver cancer is by far fatty liver, comes number one. Fatty liver, if left untreated, unaddressed early on in life, it could potentially lead to cirrhosis. Back in my days when I went to med school, as soon as you hear the word cirrhosis, you think drinking. It's like alcohol and drinking, and there is that stigma of liver disease. Well, believe it or not, that's not the case anymore. The most common cause of liver disease, liver cancer, liver transplant, by far is fatty liver related to diet and diabetes and other things. I mean, make no mistake, alcohol is still a major issue, excessive drinking, but my point is that a lot of people get liver cirrhosis despite that they've never been heavy drinkers. Yeah. It's related to fatty liver.
So let's talk about the reclassification of fatty liver disease and how it's been renamed in recent years because of the more nuanced understanding of the root cause of fatty liver. So talk us through that.
Up to 2 years ago, approximately, fatty liver used to call NASH or NAFLD. You may have heard that term.
Yes.
And NASH stands for non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. Steatohepatitis is inflammation of the liver, or NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So, we'll go back, to my point earlier. The most common cause of liver disease when I went to med school was alcohol. But a lot of people were getting liver disease from fatty liver not related to alcohol. So that's why we called it for a long time alcoholic liver disease, or ALD, and non-alcoholic liver disease, which is NAFLD or NASH. But then we realized, this is a disease, this NAFLD, the fatty liver, is connected to metabolic syndrome. So let's come up with a better name. Better name meaning instead of having a name which is exclusion, it's not related to alcohol. We're going to have name, it's more like what's it associated with. So the new name, it's called MASLD or MASH, M as in Mary instead of N. It's metabolic syndrome associated fatty liver disease. So we went from fatty liver disease not related to alcohol into fatty liver disease associated with the metabolic syndrome. Same disease, but different name, just to, if you will, characterize the disease in a better way. tell the patient that or the reader that this is a disease associated with metabolic syndrome. And you may ask, what's metabolic syndrome?
Yeah,
Metabolic
let's talk
syndrome.
about this because we are in a metabolic health crisis and those statistics are alarming. They
Sure.
are. I'm going to use the word alarming because over 90% of people do not meet the criteria for good metabolic health. Is that a correct
Yeah,
statistic?
yeah, and it's unfortunate fact, yes. Metabolic, we are
Wow.
in metabolic crisis. Like I said, I mean, 1 out of 3 individuals,
Wow.
have fatty liver disease. Metabolic syndrome, meaning the criteria for metabolic syndrome. Number one, overweight, particularly around the abdomen. We call it the central obesity because the fat around the abdomen tends to go straight to your liver, so that's why it's a major risk factor for fatty liver disease. Number two, type 2 diabetes. Number three, high blood pressure, hypertension. Three would be elevated triglyceride, the lipid, if you will. When you go to get your cholesterol check, they check triglyceride as well. So when it's elevated or greater than 150, or low HDL. HDL is the good type of cholesterol. As you know, there are two different kinds of cholesterol: LDL, which is the bad one; HDL is the good one. You want the good one, you don't want the bad one, obviously. So when the good one, the HDL, is low, that puts you at increased risk of metabolic syndrome. So that's metabolic syndrome. If you meet 3 out of 5 of these criteria, overweight, diabetes, high blood pressure, high triglyceride, low HDL, 5 criteria. If you meet 3 out of 5, then you have metabolic syndrome, and you're going to be at significantly increased risk of fatty liver disease.
So how would we know that we have fatty liver disease? If it's the silent, the silent disease, you can have, you can be asymptomatic or seemingly not have many symptoms and not know that you have it for a long time, particularly
Right.
if you don't go for an annual checkup with your doctor and don't get that standard blood panel that would show you that you have 3 out of the 5. What symptoms might you have that you might be ignoring?
Yeah, great question, Teresa. Like we said earlier, this is a silent disease. This doesn't, particularly early on, you may have no symptoms, or the symptoms can be extremely vague, non-specific. For example, fatigue could be a symptom of fatty liver disease, but there are so many things that give you fatigue, right? And this is kind of, different depending on the day. Sometime poor concentration, sometime occasional pain in the right upper quadrant of the abdomen. That's kind of non-specific pain. It gets worse with certain posture. Gets worse sometime when you lay on that side. Also non-specific symptoms. There are a lot of things that give you this kind of tenderness, if you will, or discomfort, not necessarily pain. But the point to make here, fatty liver disease, for the most part, is a silent disease early on. So to answer your question, how to find out then if I have fatty liver disease? Well, the key is screening. Screen for fatty liver disease, even if you have no symptoms. And who to screen? Well, screen patients with risk factors. Risk factor that we mentioned earlier, the metabolic syndrome. Meaning if you have type 2 diabetes, you should be screened for fatty liver disease during routine annual physical. If you have sleep apnea, obstructive sleep apnea, use CPAP at night, you need to be screened. If you have central obesity, if you have family history of fatty liver disease, you might want to tell your doctor, your primary care, your GP, during routine annual physical, I want to be screened for fatty liver. I want to find out if I have fatty liver. I want to prevent complication in the future.
So is it a fair assumption to make to say, if I've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, odds are I have fatty liver?
Honestly, the short answer is yes. And I'll tell you, there was one study came out of San Diego where they went to diabetes clinic. and they said, this is diabetes clinic. Patients comes in for management of diabetes, and none of these patients have liver disease that they know of, right? They have no symptoms of liver disease. They've never, ever been told in their life that they have liver disease. They have diabetes, and they're coming to see their doctor for management of diabetes. The study is, let's screen all of these individuals for fatty liver. And they did screening by doing a blood test and MRI of the liver, which is pretty sophisticated way to tell if you have fatty liver disease. So it turns out about 60 to 75% of those patients have fatty liver disease. So it's pretty good assumption. I mean, if you have type 2 diabetes, you probably have fatty liver disease. And it's more likely than not, if you have type 2 diabetes, you probably have fatty liver disease. Now, the striking finding from that study, about 7% of those patients have scarring in the liver, significant amount of scarring in the liver, almost at the edge of cirrhosis. Now, remember, those are patients with type 2 diabetes that they didn't know they have liver disease. They've never been told that they have liver disease. And now you're telling most of them that they have fatty liver, i.e. they do have liver disease, and you're telling 7% of them that they have significant amount of scar tissue in their liver, almost at the edge of cirrhosis, and then they never been told. This goes back to the importance of screening. If you wouldn't do the test, you wouldn't know.
What about people with sleep apnea? Do you have statistics about that? How many people who have sleep apnea would be a candidate to have fatty liver?
Yeah, for sure. More than 50%, almost the same rate, quite frankly. Patients with the sleep apnea are not just more likely to have fatty liver, but the thing with the sleep apnea, it accelerates fatty liver, if you will. Meaning, if you do have sleep apnea, you probably have not necessarily the case, but probably, I would say, you probably have other risk factor for fatty liver, right? Like the type 2 diabetes, the central obesity, etc. So you probably have fatty liver. Now, the presence of sleep apnea on the top of that will accelerate the progression of fatty liver. And the reason why, because what's sleep apnea? Sleep apnea is, low oxygen at bedtime, at night when you're asleep. You go into period of stop breathing when the oxygen goes down. Well, that triggers inflammation. So now you have fat in the liver and inflammation, meaning a perfect setup, perfect storm for scar tissue to eventually build up and then eventually accumulate. So yeah, we see it all the time. I see it all the time in my clinic where you have someone who is mildly overweight, not terribly overweight, yet they have more severe fatty liver than you would expect for the weight they carry. More severe fatty liver for the type 2 diabetes that they have. They just diagnosed with type 2 diabetes a few years ago. They're trying to get it under control, yet their fatty liver is progressive. And then you look back, it's like, oh, here you go. They have sleep apnea.
Yeah. Oof. In the follow-up book, you talk about the 4 metabolic types and how beneficial it is to know your metabolic type, and therefore your predisposition for fatty liver, and also what treatment or what protocol might be appropriate for you in order to reverse, the beginning stages of fatty liver and to prevent yourself from getting it. So can you talk us through those 4 types?
Yeah, and quite honestly, not to complicate things too much, it's all about the reason why we come up with those 4 types. If I go back a little bit, historic background, is about the BMI, body mass index.
Which, I think, thankfully, we are shifting the conversation about what a flawed and antiquated measurement that is. I'm so excited by the shift in the space about that.
Indeed. Yeah, no, I mean, number one, it's inaccurate. I've seen a lot of people with higher BMI, yet I call them metabolically healthy. So if you will, they are overweight if you use the BMI criteria, but they are metabolically healthy. Like, think of the football players, the American football players,
Yeah.
clearly, I mean, their BMI is, they probably meet the criteria for obesity, but they are metabolically healthy, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, um, and the opposite is true. Uh, we have a lot of people with normal BMI or normal weight, yet they're metabolically unhealthy. Meaning, what's metabolically unhealthy? Meaning they have type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. You put them through a stress test, they may not be able, like, to finish it on the treadmill. Um, but you look at their weight, they're not overweight, they're normal BMI, normal weight.
I call those
So
skinny fat people.
here you go. Yeah.
They look
So
thin on the outside, but their insides are not looking so great.
right. Yeah, no, 100%. So that's why we came up with those four types technically to, I think, that's to, it helps us understand kind of, patients better and how to treat. So you have the skinny fat, if you will, which is kind of, low weight or normal weight, but metabolically unhealthy. And then you have the um, high weight, if you will, overweight, but metabolically healthy. Of course, the ideal would be normal weight and metabolically healthy. That's the ideal situation. But unfortunately, like you said earlier, only about 10 to 15% of us actually check those criteria:
One
normal
in
weight
10
and
people.
metabolically. Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
And then you have obviously the overweight and metabolically unhealthy. Those guys are in trouble. That's why, when I see someone of those in my clinic is like overweight and metabolically unhealthy, I feel like there is urgency. We got to do something. We're moving here. We're going to end up with uh, you know bad outcome or complication anytime soon if we don't address it early.
And is it a safe assumption to make that the people that fall into that category also fall into the category you were talking about before, that they also have scarring on their liver in addition to the fatty liver?
Correct. Yeah, more likely than not. If you study their liver closely, I would suspect that they would have some degree of scar tissue. They are certainly at higher risk than any other group out there.
Oh, you were saying before that women are getting it a lot more. Is it all ages of women? Is it women over 40 when our estrogen, progesterone, and sex hormones decline and our insides take a beating from all the shifting hormones? What are we looking at there, and what do we need to be aware of as women?
Yeah, no, great question. And yeah, quite honestly, I think women at higher risk of cardiovascular disease, women are at higher risk of fatty liver disease, particularly to answer your question, around age 45, 50. For obvious reason, there are a significant amount of hormonal changes that happen during that period of time, which are associated with insulin resistance. Insulin resistant meaning, your body become resistant to insulin. The pancreas produces insulin, and the insulin is trying to get their job to get the blood sugar inside the cells so it can be metabolized. But your body become resistant to insulin because of hormonal changes. Meaning, the insulin going to be built up. The pancreas is going to produce more insulin because, they want to get that sugar into the cells.
And that's where you get the glycation, the stickiness in the blood,
Right.
and things don't get through. So that's the hemoglobin A1C in a standard blood panel. That's what that's measuring, right? The glycation.
It measures, yes, correct. Yeah, the amount of, what's your blood sugar, if you will, blood sugar control over the last 3 months prior to test. But yeah, they would have very high insulin. You can test for insulin resistance by blood test. You can measure insulin in the blood, and you can measure something called HOMA, HOMA. It's a kind of, blood test with calculation that tells you if you are insulin resistant.
And so insulin resistance, if we don't address it, then progresses to pre-diabetes, which so many women over 40 are diagnosed with. They get insulin
Right.
resistant, then they have the pre-diabetes markers, which then progresses to diabetes if we don't address it. So then what are the stats or about pre-diabetes and fatty liver? You're on your way to it if you don't address it, correct?
Yeah, 100%. So a couple things on that note. Patients with fatty liver disease are, well, clearly, as we said earlier, patients with diabetes are at risk of fatty liver disease. Remember that San Diego study I told you about? Most patients, it's fair assumption to say if you have type 2 diabetes, you probably have fatty liver disease.
Okay, that's the 60%.
Yeah.
60 to 70. Yeah, okay.
And it turns out if you do have fatty liver disease, you are at risk to get type 2 diabetes because the physiology is very similar. People get fatty liver disease because of insulin resistance, and people get type 2 diabetes because of insulin resistance. Quite honestly, it's quite common in my practice. I see somebody with fatty liver, maybe they don't have diabetes. You check, they are pre-diabetes. They are on the way to get diabetes. So it's kind of, it goes both ways. If you do have diabetes, please ask your diabetes doctor to screen you for fatty liver. And if you do have fatty liver, you should ask your doctor to screen you for diabetes. It goes both ways.
Yes.
I add also here on that note.
They're like a toxic marriage.
Here we go. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, in the book, you talk about the relationship between the heart and the liver being and perhaps unhealthy marriage.
Yeah,
Not taking care of the relationship. Can you take us inside that relationship a bit? And then I want to ask you about the gut liver relationship.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
It's all connected, right? We've got to take care of all of it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. One last note about diabetes, it just crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Gestational diabetes. Gestational diabetes, meaning a lot of women get
yes.
diabetes during pregnancy, and diabetes goes away after delivery. That's what we call gestational diabetes. It turns out if you have or had gestational diabetes, you are at risk to develop fatty liver in the future.
Wow,
Not just
so that could
actually,
be a woman in her early 20s.
Yeah, not just that. Fascinating enough, their children, like the newborns, they are at risk to get fatty liver. Now, remember, I'm not saying they will get
newborn
fatty
baby.
liver. Yeah, well, they are at risk in the future to develop fatty liver. But remember, I'm not saying the newborn baby will have fatty liver. And I'm not saying they're going to have fatty liver for sure in the future. But
I was about to
certainly
faint off my chair for
risk.
a second there.
Yeah, no. Yeah, they're certainly at risk. And this is quite important because I feel like, it's good to know that, hey, I'm at risk to get fatty liver. I better pay attention to what I eat because, if I slip, I may go that route easily, because they are at risk.
Where I'm going to come back to this heart gut thing in just a minute. I want to just stay on the risk factors. What are the risk factors that we cannot control that make us more predisposed to develop fatty liver?
For the most part, genetics, quite frankly. There are some genetic makeup that has been studied already. They are associated with increased risk of fatty liver disease. And that genetic makeup, it turns out it's more common in Hispanic. So Hispanic are at higher risk to get fatty liver disease and are at higher risk of progressive fatty liver disease because of genetic makeup.
What about African Americans?
So believe it or not, African American, they tend to have the gene that protect from fatty liver.
Wow.
Interesting enough. Now, make no mistake, African American are at high risk of hypertension. We see a lot of high blood pressure and sometimes difficult to treat high blood pressure among African American, which is associated, which is a risk factor for fatty liver. But that being said, genetically speaking, the genetic makeup that protect from fatty liver is more common in African American than any other ethnicities.
What about Asians? Asking for myself.
Oh, agents, it's kind of, they're not protected. That genetic makeup that, protect from fatty liver. It's not more common in Asian than other ethnicities. They're not as bad as Hispanic when it get to fatty liver, but they are certainly at risk. The thing with Asian, I see it, they get skinny fatty liver.
Mm.
Um, I think part of it is related to consumption of rice. Um,
All those
uh,
carbs which turn to sugar. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I would say they come in between. I would put Hispanic number one in terms of risk factors. Caucasians comes number two, and then you got Asians, and the least likely to get fatty liver, progressive fatty liver, would be African Americans.
Okay. So let's go back to this relationship between the heart and the liver.
Yes, it's a great question, and I'll tell you why. So if you look at what get patient with fatty liver in trouble, what's the most common cause of, sorry to use the word, of death, if you will, in patients with fatty liver? It's heart disease. It's not liver disease, believe it or not. Now, significant number of patients with fatty liver will progress to cirrhosis, liver cancer, need liver transplant. Make no mistake, that's true. That's what I do, liver disease. But the vast majority of patients with fatty liver live with fatty liver and die from heart attack and stroke.
Mm.
Meaning, when you do have fatty liver disease, yeah, of course, I want to address the liver and all sorts of things, but you got to pay attention to heart disease, cardiovascular risk factors. Did they get their heart screened? Do they have recent stress tests? Do they have any symptoms of heart disease, chest pain when they exert themselves, difficulty breathing, etc. Um, cardiovascular disease is a major issues in patients with fatty liver disease.
Wow. And we're talking about the gut-brain connection all the time. And I love how in your books you talk about the importance of the gut-liver axis.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, the gut liver axis, I mean, it's quite fascinating, to be honest with you. Studies are evolving, and I think, we're learning more and more and more every day. There is, people, there are some studies actually using fecal transplant, stool transplant, if you
Yes.
will, to treat fatty liver disease. Those studies are still premature.
Which
They're
sounds
not.
so disgusting, but it's just miraculous, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed, because there are certain microbiome that apparently predispose to fatty liver, and the opposite is true. There is microbiome that protects from fatty liver. Um, there
It's
are certain,
incredible, isn't it? And we know now that our gut microbiome is like a fingerprint.
yeah,
No two are the same, right? So depending on who your mother is, how you were breastfed, et cetera, all your genes, what you ate growing up, where you lived, the soil, everything affects it. So it's extraordinary that somebody with a fabulous microbiome who is more protective over fatty liver can give you their shit basically to heal
I
you. I mean,
know.
I hate to be crass, but it's extraordinary. I mean, modern medicine continues to amaze me.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, fecal transplant. It's fascinating. I was reading about that the other day, and it goes back to, like, it was started in China, and they used to call it the golden syrup. And they used it back then to treat gastroenteritis, like food poisoning and stuff like that. And it disappeared for a while, and now it's back. Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I'll give you a little kind of, there are some studies. This really gets interesting, showing that certain microbiome produce alcohol. So, which obviously not going to be good for the liver. Now, we are not talking about somebody who consume alcohol. We're talking about somebody with bad microbiome that going to produce substance very similar to ethanol, alcohol, that could cause fatty liver. Um, we're talking about now microbiome that produces sugar, you know, It produces sugar, meaning, every now and then you run into someone is like, for the life of me, I eat healthy. I'm trying to lose weight, unable to. Well, because probably their microbiome, produces sugar, produces carbs. They're just unable to lose weight, and clearly that's gonna cause liver damage. There is one interesting study that was published in Nature many years ago, where technically you take microbiome. They did it on mice. So technically, you have a mice that you put them on certain diets, and they lose weight. And you take that microbiome after they lose the weight, and you give it to obese mouse. The obese mouse start losing weight despite staying on the same diet. So clearly, and the opposite was true. They did the study oppositely, from obese mouse to lean mouse, and the lean mouse end up gaining weight despite staying on the same diet. The study has been duplicated in many different ways now. There's one studies on a bariatric surgery where you have someone, you put them through bariatric surgery. Clearly, they lose weight after bariatric surgery. You take their poop after the bariatric surgery, after they lose the weight, and you give that poop to to obese mouse, and the obese mouse start losing weight. So yeah, I think the future is bright, and it's going to be fascinating using definitely microbiome and fecal transplant to treat conditions like obesity and fatty liver, type 2 diabetes.
Gosh, let's talk about the hope, because modern medicine is a miraculous thing, and thank you for the work that you are doing and the work of your colleagues. So there's been some recent studies, hasn't there, that are leading us to be very hopeful about things. Let's talk about what we can do. We talked about what we can't control, genetics. Let's talk about epigenetics. Let's talk about food and lifestyle choices and the things that we can do to prevent fatty liver and love on our liver, and then also reverse fatty liver once we recognize that we have it.
Sure, yeah. Well, remember, one thing to remember, this is a reversible disease. The liver has great capacity to regenerate.
It's like a superhero of the body.
Indeed.
Can you share with everybody what you shared with me recently about how quickly the liver regenerates? It blew my mind.
Yeah, no. If you, I think the story I told you, if you do a live donor liver transplant, right? Like, you take a piece of a liver from loved one.
Yeah, so I give a piece of my liver to my dad.
Yeah, yes. Someone, hopefully your dad doesn't need liver transplant, but someone who needs liver transplant, you take a piece of a liver from a loved one and you give it to a patient who needs liver transplant. You take out the bad liver, throw it away, and put that piece in the patient. That's called live donor liver transplant. About 10% of liver transplant in the United States done live donor. If you go to countries like China, most liver transplants are done live donor.
I would do it. I would give it to someone I loved if I was a match.
And here's the fact. If you scan the donor and the recipient 2-3 weeks after the surgery, just that short period of time, the liver will be back to the original size.
And the liver is huge.
Yeah. It's almost like a science fiction.
My mind. It's like a gremlin. A good gremlin. You know that movie where they just multiplied? It's just unbelievable. It's miraculous.
So, on that note, no other internal organ, visceral organ can do the same. No other organ, kidney doesn't regenerate, heart doesn't regenerate, skin regenerates, obviously, but internal organs, the liver is the only one able to do it. And quite honestly, the process and the physiology of regeneration is very poorly understood to date, despite modern medicine. Eventually, I think someone smart going to figure out this regeneration mechanism and change the world.
Because then potentially we could be able to regenerate other parts of the body.
For sure, yeah. You can grow liver outside. Wow. You can apply this to other organs. Maybe it works, but we're not there yet. Hopefully, one day.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. All right. Let's talk about how we can be proactive and love on our liver.
So
Let's talk about coffee to begin with, because that may surprise some people.
sure, yeah, no, I mean, coffee, people ask me all the time about detox, right? Like, how can I do detox? And I'll tell them, don't go online and buy stuff from like, whatever, God knows where they're coming from.
Some
You
crazy
know,
cleanse formula or something.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
well, I promise you, they do not work. I wish they do. They just don't work. They save your money. I tell my patients, save your money, and the only, if you really really want to ask me about detox, the only detox that has been shown in a clinical trials to be beneficial to the liver is coffee, black
Wow.
coffee.
Tell me. Give us the
Um,
scoop.
Now, once you start mix it with milk, cream, sugar, I mean, you're gonna probably counteract the benefit. So ideally would be black coffee. Ideally, and I'm sorry for this, got to be caffeinated. Decaf has been shown to be good, but not as good as the caffeinated coffee. So if you don't like, if caffeine doesn't work for you, decaf is not too, it's still, you're still getting some benefit. It's not as good as the regular coffee.
So what is it about the caffeine? Because it speeds up the delivery of the good stuff in the coffee?
Well, honestly, we don't know, and it doesn't
Huh.
seem to be the caffeine itself.
Okay.
It's not well known what's in the caffeinated coffee that does the job. Because if you take the caffeine and put it in a pill, that doesn't do the same work.
Right.
It's a hot area for research. A lot of money invested
Huh.
right there to try to find out what's in coffee, in caffeinated coffee, that is kind of detox the liver. Because coffee is not for everyone. I mean, quite frankly, a lot of people don't like coffee. My
I don't
brother
drink
doesn't like
coffee.
coffee.
Yeah.
And remember, too much of a good things can be a bad things.
So you're
Yeah,
talking about one cup of coffee a day. We know is the key. Any more than that can cause all kinds of other issues. So you're talking about high quality coffee in appropriate amounts.
inappropriate amount. Yeah, I mean the studies suggest like honestly two, maybe more, like cup of coffee a day. But
Oh,
you
you're
know,
being generous. I
I
love it.
know.
Okay. Javaholics, aren't you just, clapping your hands right now? Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I mean, like we said earlier, coffee is not for everyone. Coffee
Mm.
is associated with high blood pressure. Probably not great for sleep, not great for anxiety. All sorts of things. So I would say too much of a good things can be a bad things. Everything in moderation. But if you do
What about
like
coffee
coffee,
infusions? What about, coffee enemas? They put coffee, at the end of a colonic, stuff like that. Do you have any data about that?
well, one, they don't work for the liver, and quite honestly, every now and then I do see, I do colonoscopy for living as well. We do procedure, endoscopy, colonoscopy, and every now and then we see inflammation in the colon related to those kind of
Oh,
so
okay. So
I
important
wouldn't recommend
distinction.
it. I would not recommend, like, I would just recommend, like, the one cup, 2 cups of coffee a day, if
Black coffee.
black coffee. Yes,
Yeah.
that would be good. Um, this has been shown actually to counteract, believe it or not, the effect of alcohol on the liver. There are some studies from France, almost like with the formula is like for one alcoholic beverage is like 1 cup of coffee. You counteract the alcohol effect on the liver. So the back yeah. So I would say if you drink coffee, you could counteract some of the alcohol, the negative impact on your liver.
Wow. So okay, so that would make sense then, that if you had a binge drinking session the night before you wake up, you're going to have your morning coffee, you immediately feel a
Yeah.
bit better.
Right. Right. Right.
What are some of the other things that we can do to be proactive?
Um, uh, Cut back on carbs and sugar. That's really good. I mean, this is a disease, we call it fatty liver, which, as the name implies, it's fat in the liver. Um, and people think if I eat fat, I'm going to get fatty liver. That's not true, actually, believe it or not. Not necessarily true. Um, if you eat carbs and sugar, you will get fatty liver. So it's a disease associated with carbs and sugar.
But an excessive amount of carbs and sugar.
Yeah.
And so this would make sense with all the processed cereals. You know, most children are eating dessert for breakfast and most adults are eating dessert for breakfast. Right. Sugary cereals, you know, jam or jelly on toast, you know, it's just sugar on, you know, carbs, overload. And then continuing to eat simple and processed foods throughout the day. And then all of these carbonated beverages, like you said, that this is really contributing to the fatty liver epidemic and also the metabolic health crisis.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you know, the beverages in children, I see it. You know, one of my colleague who sees a pediatric patient, I mean, she told me once in her experience, children get fatty liver because they drink, you know, the pops and, you know, they drink too much, not alcohol, but like, you know, they end up having the carbonated drinks too much. Adults actually get fatty liver because probably they eat the wrong things too much. The point is that the sugary drinks is a major risk factor for fatty liver disease, particularly among children. Believe it or not, it does. Going back to the microbiome, those drinks does change the microbiome and makes the microbiome more likely to produce sugar, carbs, alcohol, leading to fatty liver disease. That's true for example, diet pop. You know, diet
Let me
soda.
ask you. We're totally in simpatico because I was going to ask you about this. Okay, so someone listening going, okay, well, I'm good. I do diet soda. Let's talk about the effect of non-nutritive sweeteners. We know the effect on the gut microbiome, that it's not good. Let's talk about the effect that non-nutritive sweeteners have on the liver, because we've got to detoxify these foreign things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I call it honestly the lesser of two evils. Just to be devil advocate, it's not nearly as bad as the.
You're the yummy, kind doctor that's not going to be judging anybody.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Give us a balanced view. I love it.
It does. Yes, it is the lesser of two evil, but it does change the microbiome. You know, particularly regular consumption, to the point you end up with a bad microbiome who's working against you, who's working against your body. That is producing, like we said, sugar, carbs. Even though your soda has no sugar, well, now your microbiome is producing the sugar. That's causing the problem.
So is a layperson's summary of that, is this accurate, that non-nutritive sweeteners don't necessarily have a direct adverse effect on the liver, but they have an adverse effect on the gut microbiome, which in turn will find its way around to the liver?
Here you go. 100%. Yes.
With that gut-liver axis that we were talking about.
Well said. Yes.
Okay, great. Good to know. So let's talk about the impact of stress on the liver.
Yes, stress, obviously, it's not, it's not a good thing, on your body, and the liver is no difference. I mean, it's not, one thing I see with my patients, stress can lead to overeating. Binge eating, for example, can be triggered by stress. They probably don't eat that much, but they end up binge eating. You see what I'm saying? They don't eat too much, like, during the day, like, but they end up, like, just due to stress, they, too much at once. And that has been shown to be even worse than, like, it's similar to binge drinking too. Stress is associated with binge drinking, which is obviously associated with fatty liver disease and accelerate the progression of fatty liver. Stress can affect sleep, which is not good for fatty liver.
Let's talk about this, because the liver is it fair to say that the liver's a night shift worker? Like, it does a lot of its work while we're asleep to regenerate, to detoxify, to get ready for the next day. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I would say at least 7-8 hours of sleep every day is really, really important for liver health. The opposite is true, that if you have liver disease, this could alter your sleep habits, particularly at advanced stages of liver disease. So it's kind of, a viscous cycle, if you will. Poor sleep could lead to liver disease. Liver disease could affect eventually sleep habits. So yeah, they go hands in hands. For sure.
Yeah. What are your recommendations for movement? We all know we need to move our bodies for, our lymphatic system, better cardiovascular health, respiratory health, digestive health. What about movement in the liver?
Um, you know, I'll tell you one study which I really like and reference all the time. It came from Australia, and
Yay.
they took a bunch of patients with fatty liver disease, and they said, you know what, we're just gonna do exercise 3 to 4 times a week, and we're gonna do it for only 15 minutes. People are busy. I get it. People busy, and not too many people have time for exercise, etc. But this is easy. They said 3 times a week, 15 minutes each. But in those 15 minutes, we got to do interval training, meaning if possible, if your joints allow you to do it, if your heart allow you to do it, we're going to jump in on a treadmill or a bike, and you're going to do interval training. Interval training, forgive me, but I'm sure you guys know, you go as fast as you can, and then you slow down. You're ready, you go as fast as you can, and then you slow down 10, 15 minutes, 3 times a week. That's it. Everybody has that much time.
Yes.
And it turns out actually the benefit were outrageous, were significant with regards to burning the fat in your liver. Indeed, they have a control group where people were doing light exercise. They go for a walk, like, 2 or 3 miles every day. Light walk. Well, of course, that was still beneficial, but was not nearly as beneficial as the strenuous short interval training. That's what I tell my patients.
Fascinating to me. Do you know what's coming up for me is I have been doing blood flow restriction training, BFR training, and wearing these bands to stimulate human growth hormone. And the science behind all of that is just fascinating, and how it's helping menopausal women and, change their body composition. And I just wonder if BFR training, I would love to see if somebody ever does a study with fatty liver patients with BFR training with the HIIT training, It just is fascinating because I'm doing these really short workouts that tricks your body into doing a longer workout, and you're getting these extraordinary results. It just blows my mind. So I'm just kind of connecting the dots here. Wow. Tell me about some of these other studies that are coming out. So, and some of these new medications that also give us hope.
There are new developments in the world of fatty liver. If we do this interview a little over a year ago, I will tell you there is nothing out there. Change your diet, exercise, drink coffee, right? That was. Now as of a little over 2 years ago, we have one medicine approved to treat fatty liver, to treat scarring and inflammation in the liver. And as of September this year, another medicine got approved. So as of today, we have in the US 2 medicine approved by the FDA to treat fatty liver disease, particularly if there is inflammation and scar tissue.
So what are those 2 medications?
So the first one called Remistrone or Resdivra, and the other one called semaglutide or Wegovy.
Okay. So one of the injections. With it.
Yeah, okay. The GLP-1. We can start with that one. I'm sure, a lot of your audience probably familiar with the GLP-1.
Well, it's what 1 in 10 Americans has tried one now.
Yeah. So, and quite honestly, what I like about the GLP-1, they kill 2 birds with 1 stone. They treat the diabetes, they treat the sleep apnea, they treat fatty liver disease, you lose weight. So they address metabolic syndrome, which is kind of, which is really nice. So the study has shown that GLP-1, that medicine in particular, semaglutide or Wegovy, it decreases inflammation and decrease scar tissue. Remember, we said the liver can regenerate, so there was improvement in scar tissue of the liver. The other medicine, Remistrone or Resdivra, we can talk about the mechanism briefly. It turns out the thyroid hormone have receptors, obviously, in the thyroid, and have receptors in the liver. believe it or not. So this medicine
Wow.
selectively stimulate the thyroid hormone in the liver. Doesn't affect the thyroid hormone in the thyroid gland, but selectively stimulate the one in the liver and makes the liver, if you will, like hypercatabolic state to burn the fat. Um, it has been shown to decrease inflammation and reverse fibrosis or scar tissue. And we currently use it for patients with fatty liver disease. It doesn't lead to weight loss, so that's kind of the advantage of GLP-1. There is, weight loss. This medicine, Ramistrone, Rezdiffra, the thyroid medicine, it doesn't affect diabetes, doesn't affect sleep apnea. It specifically treat fatty liver. It does decrease cholesterol a little bit, so that's probably another advantage. But it doesn't affect weight positively or negatively.
So is there any data yet about how it may potentially affect someone with thyroid disease, even though the receptor is in the liver, not in the thyroid? Is there any data, for someone who has Hashimoto's or Graves', for instance, and we know that, if you develop one autoimmune condition, you're predisposed to develop a second, third, fourth, potentially fifth, and where all these systems are interconnected.
Right.
Is there anybody currently looking at that relationship and the impact potentially on for people that are living with those issues?
Quite honestly, that medicine in particular selectively affect the thyroid receptor in the liver, so it should not make thyroid disease worse. Yeah.
Yep.
That being said, we do monitor. To be on safe side, I do monitor thyroid hormones at least for the first year while on the medicine, particularly if they are already on a medicine, if they have hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, and they take medicine for that, just to make sure. But generally speaking, looking at the study, seems like there's no impact on the thyroid in particular. But worth paying attention to it. It does sometimes affect bone, so we technically like to do bone density at baseline, and then probably check bone density every 2 or 3 years.
Okay, so that's a consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked before about how fatty liver is a reversible disease with epigenetics, with better food and lifestyle choices, and potentially for some people, if they have inflammation and the scarring, that you may have to go to the next level and take one of these medications and be doing it in conjunction with food and lifestyle changes.
Sure.
So I know this is sort of how long is a piece of string, but for the average person, and I hate that term average because nobody's average, but the typical scenario, and I know it would depend on the progression of the disease, but because the liver regenerates so quickly in a matter of weeks, how fast can we turn this around, the progression of this disease?
One size doesn't fit all, to be honest with you.
I know, yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a sort of really open-ended question, but what's your experience in seeing lots of patients?
I would say generally it takes at least 1 year, if not longer, to see a significant improvement. So if you look at those studies that led to the approval of medicine to treat fatty liver disease, they did liver biopsy at baseline, and they did liver biopsy at 12 to 18 months after administration of the drug. And they were able to show a change at that period of time, 12 to 18 months. And it also depends on the degree of damage, like how much inflammation, how much scar tissue was there at baseline. Obviously, the more scar tissue, it's probably going to take a little longer for it to improve. Now, the good news, I can tell you, if you end up addressing this early on, it won't get worse. It will get better, and it's probably going to take some time to get better, but at least if we make a step in the right direction, not to make it worse, not to get the scar tissue to the engine inside the liver. I like this analogy. I call fatty liver disease is like a car. You have fatty liver disease, you got a car, and that car had some accident. And there are scratches and dents from the outside. And we better take care of it so the scratches and dents don't get to the engine. It's working fine. It's no issues. We just want to take care of it so it doesn't get to the engine. And then eventually we want to get rid of those scratches and dents from the outside. But that's going to take some time, if you will. Going to take a year, 1 year, 2 years, sometime longer. To resolve.
So that's what when you keep saying gets into the engine of the liver, that's what you mean now. Okay. So talk us through what happens if we just ignore this. We don't know we have it, or we do know we have it, and we don't make any food and lifestyle changes. What happens to our liver?
Remember, you are at risk to get heart attack and stroke, God forbid. But that's one number one cause of trouble in patients with fatty liver. A significant number of these individuals with fatty liver that is unaddressed lead to inflammation, scar tissue buildup, get cirrhosis. Cirrhosis may lead to liver failure, which may require liver transplant. Cancer loves scar tissue. If you get scar tissue in your liver, you become at risk to get liver cancer. Like we said earlier, number one cause of liver cancer in the United States is fatty liver disease. There are a lot of bad outcomes that could, a lot of things could go south, and it should be addressed early. One thing's probably I forgot to mention, we said, you got to be screened for fatty liver. If you have diabetes, if you have sleep apnea, if you have metabolic syndrome, if you have family history of fatty liver disease, you got to be screened for fatty liver. But someone may ask, so how to screen for fatty liver? How to find out if I have fatty liver disease? It's really easy. Your doctor will be able to do it. It's a blood test and a scan. Blood test and scan, routine blood test. Actually, we call them liver function tests. They're done during routine annual physical, nothing fancy. And then a picture of the liver, find out if there is fat there or not. Picture could be ultrasound, could be MRI, could be something called fibroscan, which is almost like an ultrasound. Fibroscan, that will tell you if there is fat in the liver, if there is a scar tissue in the liver, if there is inflammation, how much scar tissue, etc. So it's pretty easy. Blood test and scan of the liver of some sort. That will tell you if you have fatty liver and how bad it is.
It is really hopeful to know that it's in our hands. We can make these changes and it is a reversible situation.
Yes. Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, this is a reversible disease if you detect it early and intervene early. It's 100% reversible. You live happily ever after, quite frankly, and be done. You know what I mean?
I want to ask you about supplements. In your practice, supplements are touted as this really proactive thing. Well, I'm healthy. I take like 20 supplements every morning. And, during COVID, we saw a lot of people overdosing on supplements, and it was causing a lot of problems, and people were landing in emergency rooms, with organ failure and so forth. So are you seeing any situations like that where people are doing damage to their liver by overdosing on supplements?
Oh, Teresa, you have no idea. There would be not a week, honestly, goes by and I don't see someone in my clinic with liver injury from
Are you serious?
Supplements. Oh boy, yes.
Every week you're seeing someone with liver injury because of supplements.
Yeah. You go. I mean, a lot of people, with good intention, they go online and they purchase these supplements. God knows where they're coming from. They're not regulated, and every now and then these supplements can lead to liver injury.
Like what supplements? Turmeric or something?
Well, turmeric, there are some benefits of turmeric, but it's like, one of, like we said earlier, too much of a good things can be a bad things. 2 weeks ago, I did see someone in my clinic with liver injury from taking too much turmeric, injury from taking too much turmeric. And this has
because
been
they thought they were doing, for their arthritis or the anti-inflammatory benefits or something.
Right.
Wow.
So you do turmeric. It's working for arthritis. Fine. I'm not going to be against it, but be careful. Too much of a good things can be a bad things. It's been reported. This is already American. I think the American Journal of Medicine published case series of turmeric causing liver injury. Um, I mean, I go
That's
back
why
to
I
the
asked you about it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
go back to the point we made earlier. Honestly, save your money. The only supplements that has been shown to be good for the liver is coffee. If you like coffee, is good, is great. Um, if you don't like coffee, you will say, what other supplements I could do? Boy, I wish there is some. I mean, the milk thistle every now and then comes up. Um, eh, Milk thistle is not bad. I don't think it's going to lead to liver injury or anything, but it's like studies have not shown to be beneficial, quite frankly, to the liver, particularly fatty liver disease. What else? Vitamin E has been studied in patients with fatty liver, and there is some benefit to vitamin E. Um, 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 you know, so maybe vitamin E. Um,
What about green tea?
Green tea is
Matcha
actually,
with
yeah, that's good. That goes back to the coffee. If you look at those studies that look at the coffee, some of them look at English breakfast tea and green tea, and there is some benefit, detox the liver. So, yeah, no, thanks for reminding me. Green tea would be a good one. English breakfast tea would be a good one. Um, but boy, I mean, there's not much out there that has been
but what
proven in
about I
research.
want to know some other supplements that cause liver injury. So, people are overdosing on vitamin D, which is a fat soluble
Sure,
vitamin. So
sure.
when we have excess, we don't pee it out like the water soluble vitamins, like taking too much vitamin C, you're going to pee the excess out. So what other supplements are you, what else is causing liver injury in terms of
Um,
supplements?
Supplements, you go online and you see all of these liver detox supplements that contain like, random
Oh.
things. I would stay away from all of
So
that. There
people are
is,
causing liver injury with some of these detox supplements.
right? Yeah, they do it with good intention. They're trying like, to fix, their fatty liver with stuff like that. But,
Wow.
I wish they work. They would make our job much, much easier.
Yes.
They just don't. And they may cause damage. Um, I mean, there are certain antibiotic could potentially cause liver injury,
Really?
but that's okay. I mean, that's I would say my point is that it's rare for certain antibiotic to do it. One thing's
Okay.
come up all the time is Tylenol or acetaminophen. I
Mm.
have fatty liver and I get headache from time to time, or I have knee pain. Can I take Tylenol? And I have fatty liver. I've been told to never take acetaminophen or Tylenol if I have fatty liver. That misunderstanding, to be honest, uh, it's okay to take Tylenol, acetaminophen, of course, in moderation, even if you have liver disease. What's moderation? You should not exceed 3 or 4 tablets a day if you have liver disease in particular. But if you have headache and you end up taking Tylenol 500 milligram tablets every now and then, I think that's perfectly okay. That's not an issue. But remember, in moderation, too much Tylenol can certainly cause a problem, can cause liver failure. But in moderation would be okay.
Mm. What's the most common challenge that you see in your patients in clinic when people are attempting to reverse their fatty liver diagnosis? What do you see as being the biggest barrier or challenge?
Um, Make no mistake, I must admit, weight loss is not easy.
Yeah, no.
Losing weight is not easy, and what's more difficult than losing weight is maintaining the weight loss that you
Mm.
achieved. Um, it's a battle. It's a battle even with the GLP-1. Because with the GLP-1, you go on GLP-1, you lose weight. It's like you don't want to be on the medicine the rest of your life. You stop GLP-1, the weight start creeping up again.
Mm.
And quite honestly, I do have a lot of patients who I mean, they do the right things. I believe they eat healthy, etc. Yet they still struggle to lose weight.
Mm.
It's not easy. That's I feel like I we do have in our practice now metabolic clinic that address technically different aspect of the weight loss, like look at their sleep habits, look at how much calorie they consume, look at their exercise. Can we give them a little more coffee, more tea, etc. Um, Um, yeah, but it's still very challenging.
Oh, but it can be done. And that is just reason to hope and to screen, as you say. And knowledge is power, and knowing, what situation you're in, and then having, developing an effective plan with your practitioner. Oh, I could talk to you about this all day long. I just geek out on the science and all the studies. It's just extraordinary. So I always close every episode with the same question. I'll ask it of you within the context of the conversation we've been having. For somebody out there, who has a dream in their heart that they're going to be at their goal weight and their best health and overcome liver disease, and doesn't feel like they have what it takes to make it happen, what would you say to them?
I'd say it's possible. I've seen people who turn the corner. Remember, the liver has a capacity to regenerate. The liver is forgiving. Um,
Mm.
um,
Oh,
you
I love
know,
that.
it's yeah, you do the right things. It may take a while, for things to improve, but they will eventually. Um, yeah, I would say. You can do it, and I'm not saying it's easy. It's a journey. It's a life journey. Weight loss is a life journey. um, and we do have some medicine now that could assist, with a little bit. I always believe that let the food be your medicine. But if you're trying really hard and it's not working, you could use some help with medicine to cut the edge off. um, it's possible, guys. I mean, this is reversible disease.
Mm. Oh, thank you for this incredibly informative conversation and for the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's been fun.
So much important information. So, the cause of fatty liver, despite its name, is not necessarily associated with eating fat. It's a disease associated with carbs and sugar and metabolic dysfunction. 9 out of 10 people do not satisfy the criteria for metabolic health, and 1 in 3 people has fatty liver. It is an epidemic, and most people don't know that they have it. It has surpassed alcohol as the number one cause of liver cancer and other forms of liver disease. And women over 40 are in the highest risk category for developing fatty liver, because we're at higher risk for cardiovascular disease and diabetes because of hormonal changes and insulin resistance. And so, because of this knowledge they have about metabolic syndrome, they reclassified the name of fatty liver. It used to be NASH or NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and then scientists and doctors reclassified it, and now it's been renamed to MASLD, metabolic dysfunction associated steatotic liver disease, to better reflect the metabolic origins. And because of the increased prevalence of weight gain, obesity, type 2 diabetes, we're seeing a rise in fatty liver disease and scar tissue, fibrosis, more advanced liver disease in young children because of the large consumption of sugar and sodas. And your liver is the silent hero of your body. I loved when he said it's like the TSA security gate, that literally anything that comes into your body has to be filtered by the liver before it gets into the rest of your system. So when toxins build up and there's liver disease, it leads to fatigue, sleep issues, poor concentration, and other problems, which could be symptoms of a lot of things, which is why this goes undetected in a lot of people. So they call fatty liver the silent disease. So in the early stages, you may have no symptoms, or the symptoms can be non-specific, like the fatigue, the poor concentration. When he talked about the occasional pain in the right upper quadrant of your abdomen. And then if it's not treated and you ignore it, then liver disease can progress to inflammation and then scar tissue, and then cirrhosis, which is more advanced stage liver disease. And that leads, liver cancer, liver failure, and that's when you need a liver transplant. So the 5 criteria for metabolic syndrome: central obesity, where the fat's around the abdomen, which goes straight to your liver. That's a major risk factor. Number 2 is type 2 diabetes. Number 3, high blood pressure, hypertension. Number 4 is elevated triglycerides greater than 150. And then number 5 is low HDL, the good type of cholesterol, or high HDL. So if you meet 3 out of the 5 of these criteria, you have metabolic syndrome and you have an increased risk of developing fatty liver disease. So the key is screening. So if you have central obesity, type 2 diabetes, sleep apnea, or a family history of fatty liver, you should be screened for fatty liver disease during your annual physical, even if you have no symptoms. So how do you get tested? So it's a routine blood test and a scan. So a routine liver function test done at your annual physical. So they take a picture of the liver to see if there's fat, inflammation, or scar tissue. So it's with an ultrasound or a fibroscan or an MRI. Will tell you if you have fatty liver and how bad it is. So if you have type 2 diabetes or sleep apnea, odds are you already have fatty liver. So we've got to be testing. We've got to do our A1C in a standard blood panel that measures the glycation in the blood, the average over 3 months. And then a HOMA test, HOMA, measures the insulin in your blood. And with diabetes, if you have fatty liver, you're at a higher risk for getting type 2 diabetes. And if you have type 2 diabetes, you are at a higher, or diabetes, you're at a higher risk for fatty liver. So they're like a toxic marriage is what Kristen and Dr. Hanouneh call it in their book. So it was interesting what he was saying about gestational diabetes, that if you have had it, then you are at a higher risk for developing fatty liver in the future. And then your children are also at a higher risk of developing fatty liver. That San Diego study about type 2 diabetes was interesting, wasn't it? Where they screened everybody and 60 to 70% of patients with type 2 diabetes had fatty liver disease, and 7% of those people had scarring. They were already at the edge of cirrhosis, which is very advanced liver disease. And people with sleep apnea, more than 50% of people with sleep apnea have fatty liver. So what was he saying about sleep apnea? Accelerates fatty liver because it's low oxygen while you're asleep. So when you go into that period where you stop breathing, when the oxygen goes down, that triggers inflammation. So you have the perfect storm for that scar tissue to build up. So the risk factors that we cannot control that makes us more predisposed to develop fatty liver, genetics. So it was interesting what he was saying. Hispanics are at a higher risk of progressive fatty liver disease because of genetic makeup. Then number 2 is Caucasians. Number 3 is Asians. And then number 4 is African Americans, because they have the gene that protects from fatty liver, but African Americans are at a higher risk for hypertension and high blood pressure. So we've got to constantly be looking at our diet and making sure that we're working with our genetic makeup. And then epigenetics. Food and lifestyle choices, factors that we can control, right? So our weight, that is a risk factor. So it's so wonderful that we're really starting to realize that BMI is an incredibly flawed statistic. So what Dr. Hanouneh was saying about a lot of people with a high BMI are metabolically healthy, like football players, people with normal BMI or weight, that you can have a normal BMI or weight yet be metabolically unhealthy, what we call skinny fat people. And the 4 metabolic types are in the Regenerative Health book. It's a really fantastic breakdown of it. So the number 1 is skinny fat, where you have a low or normal weight, but you're metabolically unhealthy. Type 2 is high weight, but metabolically healthy. Type 3 is normal weight and metabolically healthy. That's the ideal metabolic type, but only 10 to 15% at most, that's 1 in 10 people, have type 3, which is the ideal. And then type 4, the people that are really in trouble, are overweight and metabolically unhealthy. So that's a sense of urgency, probably a degree of scar tissue. You need to take immediate action. So that heart-liver relationship that he was talking about, that when liver disease progresses to cirrhosis and liver cancer and you have a need for a transplant, patients can live with liver disease, but the vast majority of patients die from heart attack or stroke. It puts strain on the heart. So get your heart screened, stress tests, monitor your chest pains, difficulty breathing, etc. And if you have fatty liver disease, it's 100% reversible if it's in the early stages and it hasn't gone to extreme cirrhosis and liver cancer. The liver can regenerate. It's like the superhero of the body. No other organ in the body can do this. So it was interesting what he was saying, though, that with the transplant, and they tested the live donor and the recipient, that within 2 to 3 weeks, the liver had completely regenerated to its normal size. It is miraculous, isn't it? However, once you have liver disease, it generally takes 1 year to recover, if not longer, to see a significant improvement once you have it. So it depends on the degree of damage, how much inflammation and scar tissue there is, so you've got to catch it early. I love his car analogy. If you have some scratches and dents on the outside, it's easy to fix. It can take years to resolve if the scar tissue has made its way into the engine. So if you don't treat fatty liver, you can die of a heart attack and a stroke. That inflammation, that scar tissue builds up, you get cirrhosis. That can lead to the liver failure, which, then you've got all kinds of problems, right? So what he was saying about cancer loves scar tissue. So if you get scar tissue in the liver, that's why he was so alarmed by children having the scar tissue. You're at a risk for liver cancer. Unbelievable how prevalent this is. So the two medications, this is incredible science, isn't it? That can treat the scarring, the inflammation, the fatty liver. They've both been approved by the FDA. So Resdifra, I always have trouble pronouncing this stuff. That's the thyroid beta agonist that's used to treat liver disease. Interesting what he was saying about how they've discovered that this thyroid hormone has receptors in the liver. So this medicine stimulates the thyroid hormone in the liver to burn the fat, but doesn't affect the thyroid hormone in the thyroid gland. It also helps this drug to decrease inflammation, reverse fibrosis or scar tissue, but it's not a weight loss medication. It doesn't lead to weight loss. It doesn't affect diabetes. It doesn't help with sleep apnea. It does with cholesterol a little bit, does help with that, but it doesn't affect weight positively or negatively. So that's a good thing to know about that drug, but it can affect bone density. So just ask your doctor if that is an appropriate drug for you. And then semaglutide, or Wegovy. That's the one that you would take if you also have diabetes, sleep apnea, you want to lose weight. It also treats fatty liver. It also addresses metabolic syndrome, and studies are showing that it decreases inflammation and scar tissue. So they're the two drugs. Really exciting about the fecal stool transplants. That is so promising, isn't it? Like you said, they're premature studies, but they're very hopeful in treating fatty liver. It's so fascinating about that gut liver axis. We know about the gut-brain axis. We talk about it all the time on this podcast, but knowing that there's microbiome that is predisposed to fatty liver and microbiome that protects from fatty liver. And you may have certain microbiome that produces alcohol in your body that can then cause fatty liver. And then some microbiome produces sugar, so then it contributes to the weight gain and the liver damage. Interesting about the bariatric surgery patients and the mice, those studies with weight loss and those fecal stool transplants. Oh, I just think it's absolutely fascinating. So being proactive, how to prevent and reverse fatty liver. Here's the things that we can control. Epigenetics, like I said, food and lifestyle choices. So let's talk about that. It's a balanced diet with quality foods, eating less sugar. What he was saying about non-nutritive sweeteners, that it's the lesser of the two evils. If you're going to do stuff, it doesn't necessarily have an adverse reaction directly on the liver, but we know already from studies that non-nutritive sweeteners mess with the gut microbiome. So it will in turn find its way around to the liver through that gut liver axis. So it actually does indirectly affect the liver. Managing stress, like everything. We talk about stress all the time on this podcast. It can lead to binge eating and drinking, which is associated with fatty liver disease, and accelerate the progression of fatty liver. And stress affects your sleep, and poor sleep is also associated with fatty liver. So you got to get, what did he say, 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, because the liver is a shift worker, does a lot of its work while we're asleep to regenerate, detoxify, get ready for the next day. Regular exercise. Really interesting what he was saying about the HIIT training, that if you walk, it's obviously beneficial, but not as beneficial as doing that high intensity interval training. Coffee, that's the only detox agent that's been clinically proven to benefit the liver is caffeinated black coffee, not decaf, and no milk and sugar, 1 to 2 cups a day, everything in moderation, because coffee is also associated with high blood pressure, not great for sleep and anxiety. So 1 cup a day is probably great if you drink coffee. Coffee enemas don't do anything for the liver. And in colonoscopies and endoscopies, it shows inflammation in the colon is related to coffee enemas. So, take that with a grain. Did you like that joke? And coffee has been shown to counteract the effects of alcohol on the liver, cup by cup, in that French study. Oh, gotta love the French, right? Vitamin E. has been shown in some studies to support people with fatty liver, and then green tea and English breakfast tea. But beware of supplements and medications. Stay away from those liver detox supplements. I almost fell off my chair when he said that not a week goes by where someone doesn't come into the clinic who has liver injury because they've done one of those supplements, those liver flushes. Unbelievable. And the American Journal of Medicine published a case series that I had read before I spoke to Dr. Hanouneh about the excessive intake of turmeric causing a liver injury, because so many of us are taking turmeric for its anti-inflammatory benefits for arthritis and joint pain, etc. So everything in moderation. Same thing with certain antibiotics, Tylenol, acetaminophen. In moderation, completely fine and safe, but you take it in excess and then it can cause liver problems. Oh, gosh, what an amazing, amazing, informative conversation. Please get your copies of Skinny Liver and then the follow-up book, Regenerative Health. Not only is it information that you need to know about fatty liver disease and then more progressive liver disease, but also what to do, your metabolic type, all of the food and lifestyle practices that you can put into place to love on your liver or reverse fatty liver disease. There's meal plans. There's all kinds of stuff. They are fantastic books. So if you grab a coffee, coffee. I've got coffee on the brain now because I'm thinking about the coffee, thinking, I don't drink coffee. Should I be drinking coffee? I've got this in my brain as I'm talking to you. Let me know if you get copies of this book and leave a review and post in the Facebook group. I can't wait to hear what resonated with you.
I want to hear about your It Has To Be Me story. So head on over to ithastobeme.com/stories to share it in our free community. You can also join the conversations we're having about this episode and others. I'm Tess Masters. Join me next week and we'll dive inside another great story to help us go from dreaming to doing.